Critical KPIs are super, super helpful for us, especially as our businesses get bigger, more people are involved, more customers are involved. It's a lot more complex. And so we need new tools to be able to see what's going on in our business so that we can make sure that we're not just making more money, but we're actually keeping more, getting nicely rewarded for all the hard work and the risk that we take on as entrepreneurs. One of the problems with KPIs, though, is it's so hard to know what KPIs we should be measuring. And what makes matters even worse is when you go onto Google and you type in what KPIs should I measure. If you don't know, KPI stands for key performance indicators. The Google search will bring back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of articles. And if you start looking at lists of possible KPIs you could be tracking, it's literally thousands. And part of the problem is on Google, there's just an absolute avalanche of information from all kinds of businesses of all sizes, of all industries from all over the world. How do you make sure that the KPIs that you choose are going to be the right fit for you, not just for your industry, but for your size of business? What makes sense for a Fortune 500 company probably does not make sense for someone who's got a high 6 or 7 or even 8-figure business. So KPIs, first of all, let's cover a couple cool stories of how they've really helped businesses, or maybe how they could have helped businesses. And then after that, I'm going to tell you the 3 things that you should really be looking at when you're thinking about selecting your KPIs. So the first story is a little bit of a heartbreaker. A very, very dear friend of mine was the owner of a CrossFit gym, and they had this location that was bursting with members. They could barely take on another member inside of their CrossFit gym. And so they decided it was time to go to the next level to get a bigger space. Unfortunately, they took on too big of a space. The rent was way too high compared to their revenue, and they ended up going out of business, and the gym was gone. If they would have used some critical KPIs to be looking at what percentage of their revenue was going towards their various expenses, including rent, they could have picked a better intermediate step instead of going from small space to very big space. Unfortunately, they didn't have an eye on that critical KPI, and they ended up, unfortunately, going out of business. The second story, this is actually also from the fitness world. This is another one of my friends of mine. He owns a handful of Fit Body boot camp locations. And because he knows his labor KPIs, he's actually able to watch what percentage of his revenue goes towards labor. And he's got this so dialed in that he knows that if labor goes above a certain percentage of revenue, then that location probably, it doesn't really know what they're doing, or they don't know enough of what they're doing, because too much labor is going into running that location, given the number of members and the number of dollars that are coming in. So that's like a pretty cool ninja skill when someone can say, hey, too much, like I know that my ceiling metric, I should not be spending more than this percentage of revenue on labor or any other expense category. Now, what's extra cool is he actually also knows the floor number. And so it's actually possible to spend too little in an expense category. So if you think about it, if he's spending too little in labor, given the amount of revenue that he's got coming in, that means that his staff on the floor at that location are running around like crazy people, working crazy, crazy hard. And that's not sustainable. If that happens for too long, then they're probably going to go find work elsewhere, quit, and now he's losing an all-star staff member, right? The third story of really cool ways that KPIs have helped is a story of a trucking company. A friend of mine was consulting to them, and as their revenue went up, their cost for fuel was like disproportionately going up way too quickly. So they started looking into that particular KPI, and they were absolutely puzzled. They couldn't tell what was going on. So they dug in some more into that KPI. And it turns out that actually one of the truckers at the trucking company was actually stealing fuel out of the semi-truck. So this driver would pull into the yard at the end of the day and would actually park next to his personal pickup truck, grab a garden hose, siphon fuel out of the big truck, put it into his pickup truck, and then he'd drive the big truck back into the back of the yard, fill it up with company gas, and no one knew until they looked at the KPIs, which led them to looking at the security footage, which led them to catching this employee stealing from the company. So it's incredible how KPIs give us this like X-ray vision into our business. And KPIs are not as important when we've got like a low six-figure business, but as our businesses become more complicated, it's much, much, much more important to have higher level tools to handle the greater complexity of our companies, especially when we're not the one who's dealing with every one of our customers or doing all of the sales anymore. So the really three elements you want to be thinking about as you choose your KPIs is trends, common sizing, and the design of your profit factory. So when I talk about trends, all I have to do is ask you this. Would you like a business that does $1 million in revenue? You might say yes, you might say no. What's the difference? Well, if this business was making $10 million last year and it's making $1 million this year, well, you probably don't want that business. It's probably sliding backwards and it's in big trouble. Whereas if this business was doing $100,000 a year last year, but it's doing $1 million this year, that's probably very exciting. That's 10x growth. So we've got a situation where, and this is true in pretty much everything when it comes to business, is no single number means much in isolation. It's about the relationship of that number to the other numbers around it, including over time, which is a trend. Secondly is common sizing. So I kind of already hinted at this before, is we need to be able to take a look at how does a number relate to the other numbers in that particular week, month, or year. So whereas trends is over time, common sizing is at the same time, but across different areas of the business. So if a business is doing $1 million in revenue and it has $200,000 that goes towards labor, is that a good number? Well, if that number is 20% and that becomes 25% the next year and 30% the next year, irrespective of whether revenue goes up or down, now all of a sudden we can compare years so we can actually see what's happening in trends. It can get really tough to say, when a business does $1 million in revenue versus 5.68 million in revenue, how are we doing? Are we spending too much or too little on labor? Well, one great way that you can get X-ray vision when you've got radically different years is to look at what's called common sizing. And the third is what's called designing your profit factory. So in every single business, whether it's the smallest of mom and pops or the biggest of Apples and Amazons and Teslas, every company has at least 3 engine rooms. The first is acquisition, the second is fulfillment, and the third is what we call mothership. So it's like legal, finance, HR. And here's the thing is oftentimes as entrepreneurs, we get our businesses up to $1 million in revenue, usually through really focusing on sales, marketing, and product development, those 3 areas. We don't think as much about operations or admin or finance. And that's okay. Wherever you are is fine. What a lot of entrepreneurs don't realize, though, is how much they're spending just in that acquisition part of their business. The fulfillment part, once we separate fulfillment out from acquisition, we separate mothership out from acquisition, you start looking at acquisition on its own and saying, oh my goodness, are we actually spending more money than we're actually making on new customers of certain types? So when you can really unpack your business and look at each of the individual sections, the 3 critical sections, acquisition, fulfillment, and mothership, you start being able to see, oh my goodness, we are way too fat over here. We're way too lean over there. And KPIs allow you at a glance to be able to see right away what's happening in each of those categories. So when we combine trends with common sizing with the design of your profit factory, if there's a way to put all that together, you can actually literally tell the story of your business from month to month, quarter to quarter, year to year. And if anything falls out of line or out of place, it pops off the page at you if you've got the right tools, and you can make an intervention ASAP. It's kind of like if you got a cut on your finger, right? If you're aware that you've got that cut, you can do something about it right away. And you can maybe put an alcohol pad, disinfect it, put a Band-Aid on it, and who knows, within 7 days, it's pretty much healed and it's gone. That's the power of getting early feedback and then doing something about it. If I don't have that feedback though, if I have let's say that, this finger's numb or something, that I've got hypothermia or something, and it gets cut and that finger's bleeding. If I have no idea that it's bleeding, it might get infected. And if I still don't know anything about it, the infection is going to spread to the rest of the finger. And then after that, if I still don't know about it, the infection is going to get so bad that it's gangrene. And if I still don't know anything about it, the gangrene is going to spread into my hand and I'm going to have no choice. And if I realize it at that point, they're going to have to amputate my whole hand or my, up to my elbow or something just to save my life. So my whole body doesn't get poisoned from the gangrene. So critical KPIs, just think about that example of my friend at the Fit Body Bootcamp. He can see if his staff is working too hard just by looking at his critical KPIs. Even if that Fit Body Bootcamp is in a different city or a different state, or even if it's in his city, but he doesn't visit it all the time. And if he catches that early, he can call the general manager and say, hey, how are things going? What's going on with the team and whatnot? And he can make an early intervention. If he does not have that early intervention, though, his staff might be worked ragged, right? Which is kind of like the infection. And if that continues on, they get more and more tired. They might get to being in a really bad mood. Now they're snippy with each other. Now they don't like working there. They piss off the clients. Some customers leave. And guess what? Now we have like an infected business. And if that continues on, he might have staff that just quits. Some very, very effective, very efficient people might quit. And now he has to spend all this time, energy, and money to hire new staff, where had he just known about it a month earlier or 3 months earlier, he could have jumped in and said, oh, okay, I'm sorry, you need an extra staff member. We can hire that person. No problem. You need an administrator. We need some more training, like whatever it is. He can make an early intervention. As the expression goes, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So we've actually developed a single tool that is incredibly helpful for you to get the basic KPIs of your business all in one view. It's called a Franciscan income statement. Excuse me. And the Franciscan income statement is essentially something that I'm going to teach you during our next masterclass, which is called our Critical KPIs Masterclass. It's an incredibly power-packed, incredibly valuable masterclass, and it doesn't take days or weeks or months to study. It's actually just a few hours. So it's happening on Wednesday, May the 4th from 11 a.m. Central to 1:30 p.m. Central. So it's 2.5 hours. And if you do come to the live session, you'll be able to ask me live questions along the way that I can clarify any questions that you might have. Furthermore, when you come, we will make sure that you not only get the training, but you actually get the Franciscan income statement as well, that you can plug all your own numbers in, and you'll watch as all the trends, common sizing, and profit factory design of your business jumps off the page at you just from using this single spreadsheet, which is incredibly. It's like having X-ray vision in your business, which is so incredibly exciting. If you can't make it for the live session Wednesday, May the 4th from 11 a.m. Central to 1:30 p.m. Central, not a problem. You can still invest in the course, and we'll make sure that you get the recording immediately afterwards. There's no need for you to suffer massive injury and have to deal with like some bad outcome, like getting an amputation of a whole hand, when you can easily see the cut if you know how to look at it. The Critical KPI Masterclass helps you to avoid that massive pain. And we didn't talk about this too much, but it actually also reveals incredible opportunity, where there might be this one product or this one service or this one area where you could see a massive profit jump just by making some small tweaks in your business, some huge 80-20 opportunities to boost the profitability of your company. That also is revealed by our Franciscan income statement. And I'll teach you how to do that in our Critical KPI Masterclass. So go ahead and get yourself registered right away. I can't wait to see you in the session. It's coming up soon. And let's take our skills to the next level. Especially if you're an entrepreneur who's making more and more in revenue, but not keeping more. This is absolutely an essential course for you. I look forward to seeing you in the session.